The race for president heats up. What things are looking like right now in the tri-states and across the country?
Plus, continuous coverage from a sheriff's race in Northeast Missouri. I'm KHQA's Kendall Hyde, and I'll have that story right now on KHQA.
I'm KHQA's Sarah Rosenthal, and I'll bring you the context of tonight's race coming up.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for our election night coverage. I'm Amber Robb. The polls in Missouri and Illinois closed at 7, but for those in Iowa, voting just ended an hour ago. We have a team of journalists covering the races that are important to you across the tri-states.
Regardless of who wins, there are millions of Americans who will resent the outcome and view it as a travesty.
A very contentious race for the White House, with political experts saying it could be days before we have final results. Let's take a look at those numbers right now. President Trump with 51% of the vote, and former Vice President Joe Biden sits at 48%. Another hotly contested issue in Illinois, the graduated income tax, with 48% of voters saying yes to allow the state to enact legislation for a graduated income tax, while 52% of the voters are saying no. The graduated income tax would allow the state to tax people based on how much money you make a year. Currently, the state has a flat tax, meaning everyone pays the same in taxes no matter how much you make a year. There are several big races we are watching across the tri-states tonight, and we're going to send it over to Raja Maples to break down some of the biggest issues. Raja?
That's right, Amber. We have got a lot to get to the tri-states right now, and so much so that we don't have time to include all of the races. So let's focus on some of the biggest races going on in the Show Me State. Here's what we know so far. First, to our race for Missouri governor, there is no surprise there. We have the current Republican Governor Mike Parson ahead of Democratic challenger and current state auditor Nicole Galloway, and so he has been declared the winner, and of course that was expected in Missouri, which has been swinging to the red for the past 12 years at least. In Missouri, Constitutional Amendment 1, right now 48% of people saying yes, while 52% voted no. As for Amendment 1, some context on that, it would place a 2-term limit on all statewide elected officials. Now, right now, only governor and state treasurer have a 2-term lifetime limit. This amendment would also limit current Governor Mike Parson, and if it passes, pending Parson winning the 2020 election, which he did, he would not be able to run for re-election in 2024. Now, the amendment places a limit on someone serving more than one term if they fill in a position they weren't elected to in longer than 2 years. Now, Parson is currently serving as a fill-in for former Governor Eric Greitens. You might recall that he resigned amid a very big scandal back in 2018. Now, moving on to Amendment 3, which is that redistricting in the Show Me State. It is about on the line, and it's talking about lobbying and campaign finance as well. 54% have voted yes, with 46% no to oppose that amendment and maintain its current status. Now, Amber, we are still seeing results come in for several of the races on the local, state, and national level. So we're going to send things back to you for now.
Thanks, Raja. One of the biggest races in the tri-states, the race for U.S. Senate in Iowa. And it's been a battle for sure. We have Chase Hell in studio to break it down for us.
Now let's move into our race for Iowa U.S. Senate. One of the top races in Iowa and nationally tonight is the battle for the U.S. Senate seat. Senator Joni Ernst defending her spot in Washington against Democratic challenger Teresa Greenfield. Right now, votes are still piling in, and we'll have an update for you during the show. And it's been neck and neck, the race. This race has been close for months, and it's proven to be crucial in deciding whether Republicans retain the majority in the Senate chamber or Democrats take control. Both campaigns say they're feeling optimistic that tonight will fall in their favor.
Thanks, Chase. Meanwhile, in Illinois, Democratic incumbent Dick Durbin sits at 53% of the vote, while his opponent, Mark Curran Jr., gathered 45%. For Illinois' U.S. representative for the 18th District, Republican incumbent Darren LaHood is declared the winner in this race with 71% of the vote. And here's a look for the 94th District. Current state rep Randy Freese is up against Angel Smith. So far, he is bringing in 77% of the votes, while Smith has 23% of the votes. Moving over to Illinois' 93rd District race, healthcare is a big topic that both candidates are tackling. 10-year veteran Noreen Hammond in the lead with 67% of the votes. Lastly, for Illinois' 100th district, Christopher Davidsmeyer takes the lead by a landslide with 76% of the vote against Democratic challenger Brandon Adams. And now to a contentious race that's been heating up in Northeast Missouri for months. KHQA's Kendall Hyde joins us in studio with the most updated results for Rawls County Sheriff.
That's right, Amber. You might recall a former Rawls County Deputy, Brad Stinson, won the August primary, beating current Chief Deputy Ronald Halt. That followed a bitter social media campaign prior to the August primary election, but now, currently, Rawls County Sheriff Gary Dinwiddie has changed his mind. He announced last month that he wants to keep his seat, asking voters to vote for him as a write-in candidate, and here's a look at those results for you as of right now. So far, we do not have any of the current updated votes, but we will keep you updated on all of the new updates. And you can find any of the other Rawls County election results right now on KHQA.com, along with races and ballot issues on other tri-state counties. Live in studio, Kendall Hyde, KHQA News.
Thanks, Kendall. Let's take another look at the presidential race. President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence have 51% of the vote. And former Vice President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are at 48%.
Coming up, we'll have further analysis on the results so far.
Looking to keep up with the Tri-States 24/7? Well, head over to KHQA.com for all the latest in tonight's elections, news, and weather. Or download our KHQA News app. Also, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Welcome back. All eyes are on the race for president tonight. Let's take a look at the numbers right now. President Trump takes the lead with 51% of the votes, while Joe Biden sits at 48%. We've got political analysts standing by to break down this crazy election cycle. Let's go live to KHQA's Sarah Rosenthal. Sarah?
Amber, thank you so much. Joining me right now is Dr. Brian McGee, Quincy University President, and Dr. Chad DeWord, Associate Professor of Political Science at Culver Stockton College. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here
Happy
tonight.
to be here, Sarah.
Happy to be here, Sarah.
Thank you. What are your reactions to the results so far?
Boy, we have learned so much already, Sarah. There were people who thought coming into this night that one candidate might run away with it. That's not going to happen. This is going to be a close race. There were people who wondered if there might be some shy Trump voters who weren't answering pollsters perhaps as enthusiastically as they would ultimately for Donald Trump. It's possible that's the case based on what we've seen early on. And so far, we're seeing all the indications of a tight race that may not be resolved for days.
Dr. DeWord,
I think that's spot on. Neither campaign has suffered a catastrophic setback to this point. Trump is holding south of the Mason-Dixon line as expected. The notion of a blue wave can be safely dismissed, and I think considering the deadlines, the extension of deadlines, we're going to be waiting several days, particularly in Pennsylvania and Iowa and North Carolina, for the official results. I might also add that there seems to be a rather familiar pattern emerging, at least from 2016. We have a demographic breakdown between urban and rural voters that needs to play out over the next few days.
Absolutely. And as we have looked at current polls going on the past few months, do you feel that they have been reflective of tonight's outcome?
I think so. The polls have consistently favored Mr. Biden, and we'll see how that shakes out in many of the states that still haven't been called. But what we do see is within the margin of error, they seem to be we seem to see actual voter behavior shifting just incrementally toward Mr. Trump. But polls aren't elections, they're imperfect tools, and we're getting real live data from actual voters now. The only votes that count are the ones being cast for this election.
Yeah, absolutely. As expected, the early advantage went to Democrat voters. They tend to vote online or by mail early, and we've waited for Republican voters who 8 out of 10 show up on election day proper to vote. And so the early trajectory was in favor of Vice President Biden, and Republicans have made up the difference so far anyway. And as a matter of fact, you might say, as Professor McGee indicates, so far the trajectory has been within that margin of error. But the fact that Trump remains in the contest suggests that he may be overperforming a bit.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to keep you updated as results come in. Live at KHQA, I'm Sarah Rosenthal. Back to you.